Yes, I am from Minnesota, don't forget it. The northern territories of the land of Thor. Yes. Listen, folks, this is a very exciting time. It's a very trying time. Did you ever think that the world would look like this when you were a teenager, now that you look at it now? Did you ever imagine that Israel would become a nation so strong and so mighty that it would have the power to take out entire terror groups within several months where no one thought that was possible? Yes. Did you ever think that the Ayatollah Khomeini would be on the run for his life, sitting in a bunker with bloodshot eyes, exhausted, saying he's declaring the victory, while ironically Netanyahu and Trump are running around in the open square, taking microphones and open questions? Did you ever think about that? Did you ever think about the prophecy that Jesus said in Matthew chapter 24, that when you see the fig tree come back to life, then you know that the signs that he just prescribed, so that you can see in proximity where we're at, are very, very close. Now, October 7th of this year is a very strategic date for Behold Israel. And the reason why is because Amir is releasing a new book called Exploring Ezekiel. And yes, the QR code is behind me. This is a tremendous book for your toolkit to understand specifically the prophetic timeline. Israel coming back to the land, coming to salvation, the coalition, Russia, Iran, Turkey, Libya, Sudan, Sheba, Dedan, and the criticisms. All of the parts that will come together for you, the millennial kingdom, the millennial temple, all of those things are part of this equation. That's there for your perusal, and we'll come back to that at the Q&A. I just wanted to push that because we are trying to do as many pre-sales as possible on that. Why pre-sales? What's the point of pre-sales? Why can't I just wait for the day and buy it? If you want to help us, when you do a pre-sale, it clicks a little box in the eyes of vendors, and they're deciding which books they want to put on their shelves. The more books that are pre-sold is proportionate to the books that get on the shelves to reach the clientele at Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, and such. So when you pre-sale, if you're going to buy the book anyway, you might as well get some leverage and maximize the impact of outreach. Now, I'm standing here today, I believe, because of God's second chance. Many of you know me, many of you have seen and heard the story of last year. It was July 17th of 2024. I was cruising along on an oh-so-very quiet night with birds chirping. You know, there were little bunnies frolicking in the fields, and I was on my motorcycle. The sun was setting, and I was relaxed. I was enjoying the pleasures of life. Amen. Yeah. And all of a sudden, boom, Bambi comes right out of nowhere, and I hit Bambi, I go flying, I'm knocked unconscious, and the next thing I know, I'm in this room. Yeah, I've told the story, and what happened was I heard this communication. It wasn't an audible voice, it wasn't even in the English language. You do with this as you may. I'm going to build on this side of the story that I've never shared about, and it's related to today's topic, which is the days of Noah. The days of Noah. I'm sitting there in this vision, and I see a door, and there's a light coming through the jambs, and I see two beings without faces, and this communication said, these are your two guardian angels that just saved you right now. And I knew something was up. And he said, that is the doorway to heaven, but you're not going there yet. I felt absolutely at peace. I felt absolutely no pain. I felt absolutely secure and safe. I had no worries or concerns. It was marvelous, folks. And then this communication said, I'm not done with you yet. And then I came to. That's when the EMT was in my face. What year is it? 2024. What month? July. What date? 17th. What's your full name? Michael John Golay. And I'm like, guys, give me a hard question like who laid the seventh brick on Nebuchadnezzar's temple according to the Sibyl oracles found in the Nag Hammadi Museum in Egypt in 1972. "Oh, we got a smart aleck here." That's what they were saying. So I got into the ambulance, and all I could feel from that point on was the opposite of what I felt in that room. Folks, what I'm about to say now is the gist of the message. We talk a lot about the end times. I'm looking specifically today, we are looking specifically at the days of Noah. What are the days of Noah? What did it look like? What was the attitude of the people? The one thing that bugged me most wasn't the pain, wasn't the struggle, wasn't learning to walk again, it wasn't dealing with 2 anxiety attacks, broken bones, it wasn't all of that. The one thing that really bugged me, and I never shared this overtly with any of the crowds before until I was reflecting on it when I was putting this message together, is if I was raptured, or in this case, if I would have died, what about my loved ones on earth? See, you may be rapture ready right now for yourself. You, your spouse, you may be ready to go right now. In fact, if Jesus came, we would rejoice. But some of us in this room would say, I hope that my son, my daughter, my nephew, my niece, or any other family member, any other friend that you've been praying for, you would secretly want, if you're honest, that person to be in the rapture with you, no? So to the days of Noah, we're going to look at. The cancer of today in the entire world to blind people is exemplified in the so-called days of Noah. Let's unpack this just in our brief time that we have here. So here I am, and I'm sitting in a hospital bed, and I think of people that I love, and I think of people that I need to share the gospel with. I think of people that I need to have hard conversations with, because after all, this communication said I'm not done with you yet. I have a second mortgage on life. Even that includes standing before you right now speaking. In the Gospel of Matthew, we have a very thorough snapshot of the signs of the times. We'll have false prophets, deceptions, natural phenomena, conflicts, wars, famines, pestilences, natural disasters, and a whole cultural change in the latter days that will become more self-centered, more narcissistic, more selfie and me. In Matthew's Gospel, chapter 24, a peculiar phrase appears which got my attention 30 years ago when I first came to faith. But that day and hour, and he's talking about the last days initiating with the rapture, that day and hour when it starts, no one knows. Not even the angels in heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating, they were drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them away. So also will be the coming of the Son of Man. That is exactly how it will be. All of a sudden, caught off guard. Time's up! Time to go! Will we think about our loved ones on earth at that time? I wasn't in my vision. I'm not saying that was a rapture. I'm here, I'm not raptured. But it was a taste. I wasn't thinking. There was pure joy. But I sure would love to see all of my kids in heaven. I sure would love to see my parents, my aunts, my uncles, and I know you would too. So the question is, what are these days of Noah? How can we use them to our advantage as believers in the last days? Adding to our toolkit of so many other teachings that we've been able to master in our minds and our hearts, today is going to be very applicable to practical life in reaching out to those whom you're concerned about that may not be in the rapture or in heaven if you are in fact taken or die. Here are the two main attitudes that we find in the text that we just read. The first attitude is, You ever felt like that, where somebody says, hey, you want to go out and have some fun? You know, you go to New York, a lot of the Jewish communities, they don't want to do something. It's carelessness. It's I don't care. You know, hey, you really shouldn't be doing that stuff, man. You could get in trouble. Who cares? You know, you're driving without a license. Okay, you've got issues. You're taking life for granted. You say to yourself, there'll be a tomorrow just like today, I'll get it done tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes, you say the same thing about the next day. Not only that, but you learn how to push it. You learn how to push the boundaries of life. Keep getting more adrenaline. You like that? Are you an adrenaline junkie? Or do you love to shop a little bit more? Do you love to push the edge and what you can get away with legally, maybe? Know somebody like that? In the days of Noah, there will be a sheer carelessness, and let's push the edge to the limits. Let's see how much we can get away with without getting caught. Did you ever live like that? When I was a teenager, I'd say to my friends, let's go out one more time, only this time, let's throw the rock out of the vehicle at 70 miles per hour, trying to hit the newspaper stand rather than 40. And things like that. Or let's go 45 miles per hour and go over the ski jump and see if we can still survive even without a life jacket. Okay? All of these things the world loves to take on as if God didn't exist, as if there was no accountability, as if they were invincible, and as if God wasn't watching at all. And even believers are caught up in this attitude. Here's a picture of this attitude in Romans chapter 1. Now keep in mind, Romans was written so much later than the days of Noah, because this is, the days of Noah was the flood. It's thousands of years ago. But the attitude is exemplified here because the wrath of God was literally revealed in the days of Noah with the flood. But it's also revealed in the latter days, and it's also revealed generally when people do what we're about to read here, which, by the way, a lot of pastors and a lot of teachers don't like to talk about this passage because there's always somebody that's going to write the email, or they're going to have the concerned Karen afterwards and says, I really have a problem with what you said. Okay, what you said was very inappropriate, and I would like you to take that back and publicly apologize. Well, I'm sorry that you're sorry, so we're even. Okay, how's that? Or the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. They're suppressing the truth with the method of unrighteousness and sin. Amazing. Because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. God has shown himself to every single soul on the earth. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were they thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man and birds and four-footed animals and creeping things. Isn't that amazing? You're taking the beautiful God that you can't contain, and then you are constructing worthless material objects that cannot do anything to help you, save you, heal you, give you wisdom, give you hope, give you a sense of self-worth. What a racket. Because they've done this, because they think that they can live without the accountability, the direction of God, God gave them up to uncleanliness. You want to go down that pathway? Go ahead. In the lusts of their hearts, to dishonor their bodies among themselves, who exchanged the truth of God for the lie and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. And this, when you do that, it enables you to go, when somebody says, boy, you really shouldn't do that, or you should really help this person to survive, you should really help this person, maybe they're hungry, maybe they're needing help, somebody else will do it. It's the attitude of carelessness and pushing the edge for yourself. Do we live in those days? The question I will ask you next that I don't want you to answer is, haven't we always lived in those days? What would make these latter days, the days of Noah versus all of human history? That is the question, one of the questions that we're going to answer in our time today. There are unique caveats here that I've never seen talked about. So that is the first attitude. The second attitude is, let's push it to the next level. When I was young, we would break into homes and we would vandalize. And there was one home we broke into where we said, it's not enough just to break into it. Let's make a pizza inside this home and see what happens. We started cooking in this home that we break into. Because the owners weren't there. We'd try to see what we could get away with, We could cook a pizza, maybe bake some cookies before they got home. It was quite a rush, You keep pushing limits. You first get your driver's license. Keep the speed limit. And then you get late for work a few times, and so you start to push, and you start to push. And if you know there's no accountability out there, there's no restraint. Could you imagine what the world would look like if there was no restraining force whatsoever for morality and ethics? There's things that are legal and illegal, so the world will enforce those with police officers and military and so on. But imagine the moral side of things if there was no public accountability or shame. Imagine if people were encouraged to explore different forms of sexuality, different forms of thinking, that even became public policy. Do you imagine what society would look like in that case? Could you imagine what society would look like if the restraining force of people like you, with the Spirit of God that says no to this and yes to this, for righteousness' sake and for unrighteousness' sake, yes and no. Could you imagine if you're removed from the equation and if the world got what it wanted, what would the world look like? Imagine that. And this is the attitude of the people in the last days of Noah. They want more sin. They want more. They want to take it to the next level. Look what it says here in Romans 1. Again, continuing our narrative here of this perfectly constructed passage, snapshotting the real true intent of the human heart. For this reason, God gave them up to vile passions. And there is a graduation of, can I say, sinful behavior that there's a certain line that humans can cross, that once they cross that line, the civilization becomes truly reprobate. And this is exactly what happened, and we're going to map this out in the days of Noah. This is written after the days of Noah. For even their women exchanged the natural use of what is against nature. Likewise also men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust for one another, men with men committing what is shameful and receiving in themselves the penalty of the error which was due. Speaking past tense, in human history, he can account for this kind of behavior and how civilizations, including the flood, got so bad with activity like this, or Sodom and Gomorrah, and so many other civilizations where God had to put a kibosh on the whole thing and say, that's it, no more, because once you cross that line of sexual confusion and identity, you as human beings no longer have a moral or ethical compass. It's very, very confused. Are these unique complications related to the consequences of unbiblical sexuality when it says error which was due? Many people say, is this why God allowed AIDS and HIV and all of that kind of stuff? I believe that's part of it. I have psychologist friends in the U.S. Air Force, which I still serve in, and we work with mental health as chaplains. I'm a chaplain. And the mental health and the chaplains take in counseling sessions from airmen, many of which struggle with sexual issues. They have extreme anxiety, some of them. Depression. They don't feel accepted, wanted, needed, or loved. Many of them have been sexually molested as kids. Many of them do have STDs, and they're very concerned. They don't want the military to find out about it, otherwise they're going to get kicked out and all of this. And things are changing with this new government, and they should. Because the premise of the world is no matter what you do, and if you keep pressing sin, keep going. It's who you are. Explore yourself. Find your self-actualization. Read this. Watch this. Go to this doctor. Listen only to the ones who tell you that you should follow your heart. And what ends up happening is, you know the story, the rest of the story, because you read the articles and you watch the videos of how we now have an epidemic of sexual confusion. Unless there was a restraining force with crime, we'd have an epidemic of crime. And if people got what they wanted, if they truly got what they wanted, this world would look even much different than the way it does now. The point is this. The days of Noah, they are going to push certain things far beyond what is normal, which will trigger God to do something that he has never done before, and that is to destroy all of mankind with a flood. In the latter days, we know from Jesus' mouth himself that the latter days will emulate the same principle as the days of Noah. And we need to be prepared for that, and we are going to give you some tools of how to minister more effectively in this period. And look, it says here in verse 28 in Romans, which we continue. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over. He gave them over to a debased mind to do these things which are not fitting, being filled with all unrighteousness. And he mentions sexual immorality. Now, I'm going to read through this list, and I'm going to ask you, has anybody been found guilty of any of these things? Okay, so let's see how it goes. Let's run through the moral gauntlet, the American ninja moral warrior here, and let's see how far you can get. Anybody ever committed sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, envy, murder, strife, deceit, evil-mindedness? Have you ever whispered? Backbiters, haters of God, violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things. Man, we should go try this sometime. That'll be something. Disobedient to parents, undiscerning, untrustworthy, unloving, unforgiving, unmerciful, who knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only do the same, but approve of those who practice them. Isn't it amazing? You go to some of these places and you have conversations with people that have rogue lifestyles and they're living in sin, and you talk to them and you reason, and it's other people that are coming in from the side saying, I'm encouraging this. You know, like a lot of the gays and the lesbians and those in the military, they actually have an advocate pushing them along. And it's like, can we just meet one-on-one and can we avoid the advocate for now? Let's talk one-on-one. A lot of people are being conditioned by other people that don't necessarily struggle with the same sin that person struggles with. It's almost like a big conspiracy, and there's this puppeteer orchestrating all of this with strings, and everybody has a role. And we know that that's the case, and that's exactly the agenda of the last days. Satan wants to do a power grab. He wants to do a grab, knowing his time is short, and maximizing the evil. Did you know we can do the same thing as the church? We can maximize righteousness. We just have to know how. He says here, therefore you are inexcusable, O man, whoever you are to judge, for in whatever you judge another, you condemn yourself, for you who judge practice the same things. So we're all on a zero balance with God. Some sins have higher consequences than other sins, but we're all on a zero balance, unless there is a change, a superhero, somebody that comes in and cracks the code and recracks and gives us life. In one weekend, in AD 32, a man by the name of Yeshua Menitzrat comes into Jerusalem, and he is crucified, died, was buried, and on the third day he resurrected. He conquered death, sin, and demonic forces in a weekend. What did you do last week? See the power? I have this LCD TV. There's a little black splotch right in the middle of it. 3 pixels out of, I don't know how many millions of pixels. Lots. Every time I turn this TV on, it's the one black splotch that I see. You might as well have taken an AR-15 and shot it with a hole. For all I care, that's the one black spot that you see. And it bugs me. God is a God of perfection. One black spot is imperfect and intolerable. Therefore, somebody needs to come in and clean the whole thing. Regardless if there's lots of cracks or just a splotch. And you and I, the only difference between you and I and anyone else in these days is that we have Jesus that cleaned up all of our splotches. And for some of us, let's confess, we were professional sinners. We had a lot of breaks in our life. And it says here, as we continue, Romans 2, verses 12 through 16. Then I would like to look at the unique caveats of Noah and then some challenges to the group as we commence through the day. Romans 2, 12 through 16. For as many as have sinned without the law, you ever asked yourself the question, what about that guy in the remote tribe of Papua New Guinea that's a hunter and a gatherer that's never heard the gospel? And let's say that the rapture comes. What about that guy? Certainly, God is unfair. He's never heard. He's never had the chance to hear. Or the remote person living in a cave in Afghanistan that's always been a nominal Muslim has never had the chance to hear. That's what so many people are saying out there. Like, hey, if there's such a person like that, it doesn't seem fair that God would only bring those who believe in Jesus to heaven. Well, look at this verse says. For as many as have sinned without the law, without the Bible, without the law of Moses, without the Old Testament, will also perish without the law. And as many as have sinned in the law will be judged by the law. For not the hearers of the law are just in the sight of God, but the doers of the law will be justified. Now wait a minute. He's saying people that hear what's right and wrong, and after they know what's right and wrong, and they do the opposite, that's a person that doesn't have hope. But if a person sees what's right and wrong and has a concern about it, and wants to do something about it, that's what he's saying here. For when the Gentiles, he's saying, the non-Jews that don't have the law, who do not have the law by nature do things in the law, these, although not having the law, are law to themselves. It's not lawlessness. It's the way God wired them to know what's right and wrong without the need of a written law. Who show the work of the law written in their hearts. Their conscience, if that's not enough, everybody has a conscience, also bearing witness and between themselves and their thoughts, accusing or excusing them in the day when God will judge the secrets of men by Jesus Christ according to my gospel. So all humans are without excuse. Because whether you're Jewish and you know what's right and wrong based upon the Bible that you have, or if you're in the Papua New Guinea tribes, you still have the image of God. You're still a human being, and you have a conscience. And by the way, I had a friend that was a missionary in Papua New Guinea, and I asked him, is this really true, this premise? He says, actually, there's a lot of believers in Papua New Guinea, and many of them grow discontent with their tribal evil because they can see the impact it's having on their life and their family's life. And they cry out to some unknown spirit and say, help me and show me what the way is. And that is exactly how this missionary's name was Vinny Springsteen, not Bruce Springsteen, but Vinny Springsteen. He went there and shared the gospel, and the entire tribe came to faith. And they started sharing, and now they all have cell phones. No, they didn't. Amazing. You'd expect that in the last days. You know, communication. No, nobody's. The excuses are drying up in the world, folks. That's my point. Now, let's come back and let's really launch a missile at every one of us in a good way. All right? I've had a lot of missiles launched at me lately, but not from good sources. All right? The main thought is this. There's a reason why Jesus mentions the days of Noah. We already discussed the main ones that we all know about. But there is some ominous stuff happening behind the curtain that I want you to know about, and I also want you to know that there are consequences for that, and that there's a dying world waiting for you to reach out to them today. Did you hear me? There are people involved in stuff related to the days of Noah, and they're waiting to hear from you today about the good news that's inside your heart. The days of Noah. So this is approximately 1,600 years after the creation of Adam and Eve, approximately. The earth was exploding in number, and it also exploded with evil, and because people didn't care and they didn't have accountability, and they were pushing the lines. Let's talk about the caveats of the days of Noah, and we're going to look at briefly here Genesis chapter 6. First, there was an overt pursuit of unnatural lusts, and this is what got them in trouble with God's judgment. Now remember, we just talked about this in Romans, that the phrase, even the women did this, and even the men did that. In the homosexual community, they will say, that passage in Romans is talking about heterosexuals that want to have sex with other heterosexuals, and that's the sin. It's not homosexuals that want to have sex with homosexuals. It's the sin is a heterosexual saying, I'm going to make a deviation from my normal heterosexual lifestyle, and I'm going to have a burn with lust with somebody else. That's what they're saying the sin is. I can see from your facial response that you're not at all convinced about that. Because it's so overt, right? I'm not here to pick on any sinner. I've had my share of sin. We're all zeroed out. We talked about that. The only difference between us and anyone else is the fact that we're forgiven and that we have Jesus in us. And that's the goal we have for every human around us. Furthermore, in the days of Noah that are going to be like the last days, or the last days will be like the days of Noah, there are several things that we need to be aware of to minister more effectively. Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 2. Now it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and the daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful. And they took women, or it says in Hebrew, they took women or wives for themselves of all whom they chose. Very bizarre. You go to a commentary of the Bible and you choose this, it's going to blow up. All kinds of interpretations. This is the passage of the Nephilim. We're going to go through this today. See what's going on here? The sons of God. Who are the sons of God? Angels or demons, spirit beings, right? Can we agree? In Job, the sons of God were having access to God himself, including Satan. Sons of God. The sons of God had a particular interest in who here? The women. Human women. And not just any interest, sexual interest. Okay? And we don't know how this works. Some way, shape, or form, they are able to have some kind of sexual relations with these women. Think about that. So there's a line being crossed because this is going to be the point of no return where God says, that's it. But we'll get to that. This is something very few people talk about. So there is, can you agree, point number one, there is a pursuit of unnatural lusts that goes into the supernatural realm. Demon sex. Look, I'm not going to hold back any punches. I've been given a second chance, and you need to know the dynamics that are at play here and what you can expect. Because what we're seeing today, if you want to really know what's going on, which we will touch on, this stuff is happening today. Right. Yep. Now, number two, not only in the latter days, like in the days of Noah, we'll have the pursuit of unnatural lusts, we'll have the provocation of God's patience on a level we've never seen. Watch this. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. You got to limit these people because, man, what they're capable of doing and pushing the lines, it's too much. There were giants on the earth in those days. Anybody know what the Hebrew word for giants is in this specific passage? Nephilim. And also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, in other words, they had sex with the daughters of men and bore children to them. It's you've got to have intercourse to have children. So those were mighty men who were of old, men of renown. So you see what's going on here. Nephilim. What is this word in Hebrew? Funny you should ask. It comes from the infinitive lipol, which means to fall or to trip and fall down. If there was a banana here and I slipped, I would fall. Mike nafal. Mike fell. Or ani nofel, I fall. Nephilim are fallen ones. Fallen what? Angels. So there's two premises, there's two explanations for this. Was it that the sons of God were cohabiting with women and the so-called giants, the so-called anomalies of physical fitness and wisdom? Was this an actual scenario like the antithesis where the Spirit of God allowed Mary to conceive without a husband, without any sperm? Or are demons putting it on the hearts of men of the land already, demonizing them, and then using them as their hosts to have sex with women, and then somehow the DNA and the spirituality mixes in some way, shape, or form and creates giants either way? We don't know. What we do know is this was a line that should never be crossed. And it's being crossed again right now as we speak. It is. And this provoked God. Now, number 3, I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to lay the battlefield out. And then we're going to talk about some methods of how to get through it, so that if you're raptured or if you die, you'll have the assurance to know that you've reached out in the most effective way to those who you're concerned most about. Because when you hear some of this stuff today, when all of the tumblers of the lock of Bible prophecy make sense to you, you know that the time is very near. I wake up every single morning literally wondering, okay, God, this is it. Is this it? Is this my last day? Is this what I need to do today? My life is yours. Use me. Allow me to be your mouthpiece. Allow me to do whatever you want me to do today, because I don't know. I don't know. You saved me for a reason. Number 3, what happened here in this passage, the days of Noah. Here's God's proposal to mankind. He gives them an option. He proposes 2 options: judgment or salvation. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil, continually. It's pretty strong, huh? And the Lord was very sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. So the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing, and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. But you read the rest of it. What's your first name? My name is Mike. Take Noah's name out just for fun and put your name in there. Now read it. But Mike found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Oh, how did you find grace? Jesus. How many of you can honestly say, without any doubt, that Jesus rules and reigns in your heart today, this morning? Okay? Most of us. That means that we're not done here yet. That means that there's some things that we need to be aware of and some challenges that we need to take on. Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Back then they didn't have Jesus, but what did they have? Come on, most esteemed biblical students of the world. Faith in God and the willingness to obey. Faith and obedience. Trust and obey, for there's no other way. You know the song. All right. Okay, so let's get back into this, and we'll go to the challenge in just a few minutes. Okay. In this world, there will be multiple messages, false teachings, confusion, people that want you to do this or do that, and it's going to be very, very fierce. A few examples of this include the environment. There's no sin in the mind of the world, so they have to invent a common issue to solve. And so we have climate change, which is really just fluctuating weather patterns, and it boils down to what you want to believe. Why was it hotter 20 years ago in this city than it was now? I don't know, because of weather. I don't know. Another example is sexuality. The world would say that sexuality is malleable. The Bible says that it's fixed. There is, I'm not a veteran yet because I'm still in, but on Veterans Day we celebrate the courage and the commitment of service members and the families that have had to give up their privileges so that their loved ones can go and deploy. And we have a Memorial Day, which is one day as well, where people literally die for the cause of freedom, and we salute them and we fly the American flag and we have barbecues, and we have President's Day where we celebrate President of the United States, and it's one day, and then we have 1 month celebrating. How did that come to? And it's not only in the United States. All right, let me throw this up here. Isn't it ironic, in the last, look at this chart, from since 2020 until, look what it says here, 2025, and then beyond that is the projections. If everything goes normal as it has been today, people are changing their bodily functions to become the opposite sex in some way, shape, or form, whether through breast augmentation or extreme surgery or psychological or hormones. This phenomena has skyrocketed since 2020 on levels that we've never seen before in human history. I'm just asking the question, what's going on? Is this truly the days of Noah? If we're in the days of Noah and people are experimenting with sexuality that's rogue, and Jesus says that the last days will be as the days of Noah, this is what you would expect. There it is. Isn't it ironic that the symbol that God would never judge the world again and offer salvation, and most of the rainbows of Noah have 7 shades of color. Did you know that? And then the LGBT, how many colors in their rainbow? 6. 6. The number of the beast is 666. Man, 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 no God. And if that's not enough, look at this. You have the Palestinian supporters on the gay flag with 6 shades. And the Gazans are looking at this going, what is this? We're very angry from this flag. We want to cut the throat for the gay man. Not there. So, isn't it amazing that Satan, he's evil, but he's quite the architect here. Look at how he can fool and deceive everyone around him. Amazing. There's an increase, and we've introduced in the last 5 to 7 years, now brace yourself, AI demon porn. Don't worry, I'm not going to show anything. Where Nephilim, demons, and there's a market for this, have sex in an animated AI manner. It's gaining huge ground, folks. The way we look at government is changing. We have a respite, like I call this the days of Josiah, where God withholds his judgment because righteous people are in office for a time. How long will it last? I don't know. But I do know that we're in the days of Noah, and we do know that there's stuff that happens in the days of Noah that are going to happen in the last days, even worse than in the days of Noah, before the second coming of Jesus. 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 4 through 8. For if God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down to hell, the Greek word there is tartarus, and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved for judgment, and did not spare the ancient world, but saved Noah, one of 8 people, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood on the world of the ungodly, and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemning them to destruction, making them an example to those who afterward would live ungodly, and delivered righteous Lot, who was oppressed by the filthy conduct of the wicked. For that righteous man, dwelling among them, tormented his righteous soul from day to day by seeing and hearing their lawless deeds. God uses small numbers in an overwhelmingly evil situation to rescue and save. And that person is you today. It is. By the way, Tartarus, in the Greek here, it uses the word Tartarus. Now, if you go back to the 8th century BC, in the Greek mythology, they have this place in Hades called Tartarus. Tartarus was so far into the depth of Hades, Plato and others said that heaven, or paradise, is so far beyond the earth. So Tartarus is the lowest point. You ever ask yourself, does hell have a special place where it really burns hot for the really reprobate people? Well, that's what the ancient Greeks thought in the 8th century BC. Only those, they called them titans, some way, shape, or form they also had in their mythologies, demonic sex and sex with the gods, and some of these titans would presume to be as great as God, and they would be condemned to Tartarus based on their mythologies. Now, it's all mythologies, but here in the Bible, Peter readily confesses that in the days of Noah, those spirit beings that were messing around went to the lowest place in Hades, awaiting the final judgment of the lake of fire. Are you seeing the picture? 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 8 through 9, it says this. Then the Lord knows how to deliver the godly out of temptations and to reserve the unjust under punishment for the day of judgment, and especially those who walk according to the flesh of the lust of uncleanness and despise authority. They are presumptuous, self-willed. They are not afraid to speak evil of dignitaries, whereas angels who are greater in power and might do not bring a reveling accusation against them before the Lord. So it's comparing the culture of demons to angels, and now you have a choice. Now, over the next 2-3 minutes, here is your choice. Here is my choice, and I believe this is one of the reasons why my life was spared. This is the challenge this morning. Be moved by godly fear, knowing what you know. Don't hoard the truth and become a YouTube prophecy addict, drinking energy drinks in the basement. Get out. 1 Peter chapter 3, it says, For Christ also suffered once for sins, the just and the unjust, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but made alive by the Spirit, by whom also he went and preached to the spirits in prison, who formerly were disobedient, when once the divine long-suffering waited in the days of Noah, while the ark was being prepared, in which few, that is 8 souls, were saved through water. There is also an antitype which now saves us, baptism. Not the removal of the filth of the flesh, but the answer of good conscience toward God through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who has gone into heaven and is at the right hand of God. Angels and authorities and powers have been made subject to him. When the demons are doing their deeds and Jesus shows up, they tuck tail and run. Light always pierces darkness. It says in Hebrews 11:7, by faith, Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved by godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness which is according to faith. So if you're not convicted, if you don't care, then you don't care. But you got to care. So my prayer is that your eyes will be awakened and you care. That you say to yourself, there is at least one person in my life that I care about, that I don't know if they're going to heaven. I don't know if they have a relationship with Jesus. Who is that person? Are you moved with godliness right now? Do you see what's going on, that the time is short? Do you see how much evil the world is trying to propagate? Number 2, have Jesus conversations. If you've missed everything we've talked about, this is the one point you can't miss. Amir and I were in Idaho a few weeks ago. We gave a challenge to people. I have a list of people that I don't know if they're going to go to heaven. One of them is a family member. I've had a similar challenge like this in the past, where you text somebody and say, hey, I'm at a conference, I'm thinking about you, can we have a conversation? We've done that, and that's been very successful. 8 out of the texts that go out with that message on it are returned by the person, and 2 out of those actually end up having spiritual conversations, and 1 comes to faith. That's the metrics that I put together after I heard back from people. The challenge I give to you right now is, this blew things up in Idaho. I sent a text to a loved one in my family that I was not sure was going to heaven. And I said, I'm sitting here in a conference, I'm thinking about you. How can I pray for you? Non-believer. 2.5 minutes later, he wrote this big block stating all of the things that I could do to pray. I said, can we meet and talk about this? He said, please. This guy went to church with me last Sunday, and he went to take communion. You can do that right now today. And if they don't become a person of faith, at least they know that you love them enough to ask for prayer. But do it. Don't ask for prayer and then don't pray. That would be very rotten and low of you. Okay? Lastly, and this is where we're going to leave you. You see the world pushing the boundaries of evil? Well, let's do the same and push the boundaries of godliness. For every single act, let's do 3 more acts of righteousness on this side of the equation, and let's overwhelm them and make them look like pathetic losers, because their sin, as it says in Romans, is no match for the grace of God, that when God's people step out and just say, use me, Lord, I want to obey. I don't know what you have in store for me today, but I want to do what you're asking. In Genesis chapter 6, verse 22, it says this, thus Noah did according to all the Lord God commanded him. So he did. I'll leave you with this story. There's a guy in my church, not happy. His wife drug him to church every Sunday. He didn't want to be there. He'd sit there like this. Sometimes he'd fall asleep. So I started praying for him. He was an alcoholic. He was abusing his family physically. Cops had to intervene. And there was a missions trip. And somebody in the church grabbed him and said, come with me to this missions trip. And so he did. I saw pictures of this guy. And he had a little homeless Haitian girl in his arms. And I could see the compassion on his face. And I'm like, this is not the same guy. He returns. He gave up alcohol. He gave up the abuse. And he began to serve every single Sunday and many days within the church. He said yes. That's a family member of mine. To reserve the privacy, I won't admit who it is, but it's somebody very close to me. You ever have those voices not voices, but you ever have that voice that says, you should do that? Or you shouldn't do that. And the voice keeps coming back over and over again. And then we say, well, I don't know what God's will is in this situation. If there's a voice that says, you should, and if everyone else around you is saying, wow, you should do that. Or if you hear that voice, if there's a name on your heart, even now, when we just talked about this, should I send the text? And then you're battling within your mind right now, I'll send it later, I'll have time later, and you're conflicted within yourself because you don't know how that's going to come across to the other person. Do it. And thus Noah did, according to all that God commanded. So he did. Who's hurting around you? Who's confused? Who do you love? Who can you reach? How can you reach them? I just gave you one easy solution. We don't know if tomorrow's coming, because as in the days of Noah, where God can show up with a judgment, in this case the rapture, and then the judgment. Today is the day of salvation, not just for you, but for them too. Let's pray. Lord, thank you. May we be sensitive to your Spirit's leading now. Throughout the day, as we're going to hear some excellent teaching, wonderful content. Allow us the pathway, guide us to how to use it to reach out to those around us. Tenfold compared to the evil that the world is trying to do right now. In Jesus' name we pray.